Hello, welcome to the third video in our series. In the first video, I looked at the things that, if only we had known them. We ran through evidence-based instruction, what it means for reading intervention, and what it means for all students, really. The second video looked at what the elements are of effective reading intervention, and I ran you through some of the characteristics and things that you need to keep an eye out for when you're running reading intervention. As promised, this video is all about the absolutely fascinating topic of cognitive load. Having learnt about it, I just think that if we can understand how to support students' cognitive load, whether they be our struggling learners or whether they be our kids who are the middle of the road average kids, we're going to maximise learning for them. So my name is Jocelyn. I am from jocelynsemaeducation.com, and one of the things I really love to do is bring teachers information and strategies and support. So that really makes your job easier, because we're all about kids. We all got into this game so we can make a difference. And I hope that the work that I do can do that for you. So let's have a look. Let me share my screen here. When you work with me, I often work via Zoom, and I've lost my controls. There they are. And we often have live sessions. So there we go. All right, let's get started. Supporting cognitive load. Cognitive load is one of those things that we all have. Every single person has it. It's not something that just kids who struggle experience. It's for everybody. And you can see this little picture here that you have in front of you. There's a red head that's absolutely exploding. And you have experienced this yourself. I'm absolutely certain of it. Think reporting time, where you still have to teach, you have to write reports, you have to meet with parents, you have to manage your own fatigue, because we know at the end of a semester we're all tired. We can experience cognitive overload, and so can our students. So when you reach that point where you think, if one more person asks me to do something, or if I go home and I just can't find the butter and it makes me want to cry, that's cognitive overload. And that's what our students who struggle experience often. So when we see, it could be as extreme as chair throwing. When we see kids who are frustrated, I've been working with a class and there's a little student and he gets quite frustrated and he screams out, "It's not even easy." And he's, just turned 5. So just to let you know that he's not 12. But that tells me that he's in cognitive overload and he's feeling uncertain. I want to help you support every student so that they go from being this exploding head to feeling like a champion. Because when we can break things down, when we can support students, we can help them really experience success. And it's the best feeling in the world to see a kid with a huge smile on their face and they're going, "Yes, I can do this." And so that's what I want to talk about today, actually, how we do that. So cognitive load, to give the definition, it's there on the screen, is the amount of working memory that a person has at any one time. And I want to unpack that a little bit for you. But first, let's look at the 3 types of cognitive load. I'm not going to read that verbatim, that's boring. I'll let you have a little look there. But there's 3 types. The first type of cognitive load is intrinsic load. So that's how complex a task is to start with, compared with the background knowledge and skills that the student might have. So for a 6-year-old, for most of them, a Harry Potter novel is a very complex task. So there would be a high degree of intrinsic load. But for a 15-year-old who is a competent reader, there's not a high degree of intrinsic load there, because they can actually perform that task quite easily. The second load is extrinsic load. That's the unnecessary pressure that we place on the student, or that just exists for the student. So when you can't find the butter and you want to cry, you're tired, you're fatigued. That's a form of extrinsic load. Finding the butter is not usually a high cognitive load task for you intrinsically. But when you're tired and fatigued and maybe a bit frustrated and maybe feeling a little bit helpless about something, it isn't an easy task at all. So all of those things are extrinsic load. Then we have germane load, which may sound like a bit of a weird word, but that's what it's called. It's germane load. And that is the load that's placed. This is the good load. We want this because it's how we help students take the knowledge from their working and short-term memory. How do we get them to transfer it to the long-term memory so they can use it later? That's the good stuff. We really want to maximize that. I'll skip through. Here we go. Now, working memory is very closely related to cognitive load. And we have differing amounts of working memory. Now, you don't need to have an educational psychologist do an assessment on every one of your students for you to know who has a great working memory and who doesn't. And I've heard it expressed, I think, very aptly as it's your Post-it note, where you store information for very small chunks of time so that you can use it for something else. So I went to a PD once, and this is where I really started to realize that my own working memory was actually a bit rubbish. I went to a PD and the lady gave it a 5 or 6 digit number, and she said, now just hang on a second, now write it down backwards. And there was no way in the world that I could do that. I don't have a great working memory. It's not necessarily linked to intelligence, but it is linked to learning difficulty. Because if you can't hold things and there's lots of information just coming at you, you're not going to be able to keep up. So it's the size of your Post-it note. I also think of it as the strength of the glue, of the sticky bit on the back. Now, this is just my own interpretation, thinking about my own experiences. It's where you can only hold small chunks of information. That's the size of the note. But the glue is how long you can hold it for. And even the best working memory is only for a few seconds. And if you don't do something with it, you're going to lose it. Or not lose it like be angry, but lose it as in forget it. So in my mind, when we're supporting kids, we need to think about 2 elements. How big is the Post-it note? How much information can they hold? And how strong is the glue? How long are we asking them to hold it before we do something with it? Let's unpack that a little bit more. So I've kind of represented the amount of information that children can hold. And generally in the literature, you know, I see figures ranging from 4 to 7, 4 to 8 pieces of information. I've just gone with 4 today because that seems reasonable. You can see on the right-hand side, that would be someone with extremely good working memory. And some people do have that. You can, you know, give them a number and then ask it back and then they can rattle it off to you and you're all good. Probably, though, that perhaps those people have better strategies. And that's something that we will talk about in the teach-along that I'm running about supporting students who are struggling readers. So we've got our Post-it note. And, you know, for some of our children, they're here in the one number and that's what they can hold for a variety of reasons. So they can't keep up with the pace of the rest of the class because they just can't process that many bits of information all at once. If the Post-it notes are our working memory, this bank vault with the boxes is our long-term memory. And what we need to do is help children to use the stuff that's in our working memory so that we can process it and it transfers to our long-term memory so we can retrieve it later. The bank vault is called Schema, and Schema is stored, information is stored in Schema, Schema is sort of like your topics or your areas of your memory. So your knowledge about phonemes and graphemes will live in one area. Your knowledge about text knowledge will live in another. Your knowledge of high frequency words is in another. And those are all interconnected, but we store things together. And part of supporting cognitive load and working memory is helping create connections. And there's so much I could talk about in terms of rehearsal and retrieval and all of that, but we don't have time for that today. That's a topic for another day, but that is something to keep in mind and have a little look at. Do some Googling, it'll be there. Things that cause working memory stress and cognitive overload. You know, that's the child in your class that you start talking, they're okay, and they'll reach a point where they go, I can't, I can't do this anymore. And they just put their head on the desk, or they start to draw, or they check out, or they have the opposite effect and they start to act out because they're overloaded. They just can't manage. Some of the things that contribute to it is not having enough time to process. Classrooms are very fast paced, and we as teachers feel the burden of the overcrowded curriculum. So we move quickly, and not all children can do that. Too many instructions at once is a killer. Too many bits of information to process without having some sort of multi-sensory aspect to it. Noise in the environment is a huge one. Now, if you are of a certain age, there will come a point when you need to concentrate in the car park to park the car, you have to turn the radio off. And I'm going to put my hand up and say that's me. Particularly if I'm going into an underground car park, I don't know what it is. But if I really need to concentrate on something, I've got to turn the radio off and the kids have to just be quiet because otherwise I can't focus to navigate with all the traffic. I really hope I'm not alone in that. I don't think I am. Being distracted by other students or visual noise. Sometimes we decorate our classrooms to the nth degree so it looks like a parrot sort of threw up on the walls. That visual stimulation can actually put stress on cognitive load. Being tired is a huge one, massive. There's a reason that sleep deprivation is a form of torture. So when kids are tired, they can't give things the same concentration as they can when they're fresh. We know that. We're the same ourselves. Not building background knowledge is huge. And if we think about that intrinsic load, the intrinsic cognitive load, that is, remember, it's the complexity of the task compared with the background knowledge or skill that a student has. So if we don't spend an adequate amount of time building background knowledge, we're increasing the intrinsic load of the task, making it hard for students. When we read, these three types of load come into play as well. And I'm speaking quite broadly here. In the Teach Along that starts on April 30th, the Supporting Struggling Readers Teach Along, I will break this down into different levels of reading development from our novice readers through to our advanced or proficient readers. So today I've been a little bit broad. But an example of having high intrinsic load is giving an older student a novel or giving a novice reader a predictable text where the students don't have a firm grasp on decoding. That is a high intrinsic load task for those students. Unfamiliar vocabulary also contributes. Extrinsic load, asking children to read, or students, say you're a high school teacher or upper primary, saying, I want you to read a chapter a night, and then that can lead to anxiety. So that's not giving enough time. We've got a task that's high intrinsic load, they don't have the decoding skills, then we make them feel like they're rushing it. You've got to get a lot done quick, and you've had a full day at school and go home and read a chapter. There's very little room there for the germane load, the load that helps children to take what they're holding in their working memory and short-term memory and do something with it so it gets to their long-term memory. Not great task design. My daughter is in year 11 and she brought home a task that was a maths task, and it's her assessment. And it required her to do a budget, which is absolutely perfectly fine. But one of the criteria in that task was that she had to make sure that the person who's doing the budget was on a disability support pension. Okay, fine. But then she had to name a disability that was relevant to the disability support pension. Now, to me, that's high intrinsic load that actually doesn't contribute to the task. It creates anxiety, so there's your extrinsic load, and you put a time pressure on that, and all of a sudden, there's not a lot of germane load going on there. So sometimes when we design learning, We forget about background knowledge. We forget about how much skill is the student required to have before they even begin this task. And when it comes to reading, we can think about phonics and our knowledge of high frequency words. And then when we're looking at comprehension, our vocabulary. And if you saw my post about fluency and increasing fluency recently, if you don't have a solid grasp on the language, it makes it really hard to be fluent. And when your fluency is compromised, so is your comprehension. Just a little side note there. So looking at the 3 types of load in reading, and what are we aiming for? We need a suitable level of intrinsic load, a good match between the background knowledge and skills of the student and the text we want them to read. We really need to minimize extrinsic load, and sometimes that means pulling back on the expectations. Remember, we're teaching students. We got into teaching to make a difference to kids. But sometimes, and maybe it's not sometimes, maybe it's often, our heart hurts as teachers because we feel that we're being driven by the curriculum rather than driven by students. Now, don't get me wrong, school leaders out there. I am absolutely a let's teach to the curriculum person because that's our overarching document that tells us what to teach. No problems there, and we should be doing that. But we also need to be mindful that if the child is 2 or 3 years behind, or even 1, and we're just banging on at the year level expectation and they're not there yet, the intrinsic load of the task is too high. The time frames we give them, because we're a bit anxious ourselves about making sure we're getting everything in. So when it comes to reporting, we've done it all, increases the extrinsic load. We don't want that. We want those things to be minimized and suitable so that we can have a really big germane load. We can maximize those opportunities for children to learn well and be comfortable and work to mastery. And we saw from that last video about effective reading intervention that we need to give children opportunities for mastery. What does this really mean for reading? What can we do at a really practical level to support readers? Yes, our struggling readers and also our proficient readers as well. Because when we are teaching high school, students might have 6 or 7 subjects to juggle. And so that adds extrinsic load because there's a lot more going on in their brains. Ensure that children have automatic skills in decoding before increasing the complexity of text. But we know that kids need to access the appropriate level of text so that they can be working at an age-appropriate level in terms of content. So explicitly teach the vocabulary to aid fluency and comprehension before the students read. Teach the full alphabetic code and front-load words that might be tricky. Have students do something with what they read, even if it's read 2 pages and write me a 3-sentence summary or talk it through with someone. That's doing something with the information. Allow sufficient time for processing. Sometimes, and again, I keep saying sometimes, but actually often, we need to slow down to speed up because when we're fast all the time, kids only get this surface level interaction with the content. Sometimes we've got to pull back. Often we need to slow down so that they can develop strong skills to build really strong foundations for learning. If students are finding the level of text you need them to read in the upper primary or high school difficult, allow them to listen to the audio book while they read. It's not cheating. It's about interacting with the content. If they're not able to access the text level you need them to, you still need to be able to teach them to read. They still need reading instruction. But to be able to access the content in your English lessons, allow them to listen to the audiobook, to have multiple channels for the information to come. Use decodable text for any student who needs them, regardless of age. And I said this in the last video around the elements of effective reading instruction. that decodable text is not something just for the little kids. Yes, you absolutely want to make sure they're age-appropriate text, but give the kids the decodable text for the instruction. So I want to share with you a few stories about what actually can happen. I'm going to stop sharing for a second and we'll come back to this. I want to share with you what it looks like and feels like when we get this right. One of my absolute favorite things in the universe to do is support struggling readers. These are kids who think they're dumb. They're kids who feel like everybody else but them is clever. And I say, give them to me. They're my kids, every one of them, because I know we can make a difference to them. I've seen kids who their parents describe that they take home the book for home reading, and there's stand-up arguments, there's throwing the book across the room, there's yelling, there's screaming, there's hiding behind the lounge because they just feel so utterly useless. And after some good solid instruction, some good quality intervention, this mum once described to me, she said, I'm really, really happy that he can read now, but there's times where I have to say, mate, it's time for me to cook dinner, so I can't read with you. So can we do that later? And the kid's like, but Mum, I want to read. Those are the gold moments. I work with children every single week, both face-to-face and over the internet, to help them with their reading instruction. And there's nothing better than seeing the sparkle in a kid's eyes, regardless of age, when they realize that I can do this. I had a student say at the end of last year, oh, well, before that much writing would have just made me feel very, very nervous. But now I go, oh, yep, that's okay, I can do it. When they see themselves as learners, that's the best feeling in the world. And sometimes I think, oh, maybe I shouldn't be paid for this work because I love it so much. We can transform lives. Supporting our struggling readers is about helping them not be a statistic. 48% of our country here in Australia is functionally illiterate. They can't read well enough to fully interact with their profession, to fully interact with their community, and that is unnecessary, and we can do something about it. The earlier we catch them, the better it is, but it is never too late. Now, I've said before that statistically, the level of reading that children have in grade 3 is kind of where they stay. And that's true, but not because they can't continue to learn. Granddads can learn to read. It's because we stop teaching them. We stop providing intervention and we start just simply accommodating the lack of reading. We can make a difference. You don't have to be a specialist. You need to just understand some fundamentals, believe in kids, be systematic, be data-driven, be consistent, and really be there and have a message for kids that says, I'm on your side. Today, reading is hard and you might not feel like you can do it, but I'm here to tell you you can. And just because it's hard today doesn't mean it will be hard forever. And that's what I want to help you have the confidence to deliver to your students. So let's have a little look at what I've got coming up for you. Oh, where are we? Oh, this one. There we go. So my term 2 teach along is called Supporting Struggling Readers. And here's a list of all the things that we're going to learn about and cover. And some of these you might be a bit familiar with, and some of them you might not be. I'm not going to read the list because, again, that's boring listening to someone read a list on a PowerPoint. But it starts on April 30th. It is available to start booking your place from tomorrow. That's Sunday. I'm having trouble remembering what the date is today. I think it's the 22nd tomorrow. Let me have a little look. Sorry, let me check my calendar because in my cognitive load, I don't have the date. Yes, it's the 22nd. The 22nd of March, you are able to book your place in this teach along to make a difference to kids. Now, if you are someone who is currently having school closure, you're having to find ways to teach online, this is absolutely perfect for you because not only do you probably have a little bit more time, that you're not face-to-face with kids. But I'm going to show you through your participation in this how you can support students online, and you will have access to information that you can use straight away. I'll also show you how you can use your computer as is to bring value to kids who are struggling readers. So here's what it is. A teach along is, oh, I'm going to come back a bit. Sorry. A teach along is an online training, but it's not a sit there for a whole day training. It's 5 one-hour sessions, exactly as you're seeing now, but there's other people there as well. And you get to collaborate online, so you build your skills in online collaboration too. But it's little chunks of information. I'm also going to give you a bunch of resources in this teach along. Scripts for having sensitive conversations with parents. Nobody likes having to make the call to the parent and saying, can you come in? I'm concerned about your child. But if you can have a script, some ways that you can word things, that gives you confidence to support the parents instead of feeling anxious yourself. I will give you informal diagnostic assessments for students. These are not norm referenced, official, scientific anything. They're informal, but they will allow you to pinpoint where children are up to start to make a really sound plan. I will give you lesson plan templates for intervention sessions that can be delivered either one-on-one or in small groups. With the sessions that are run online, exactly like you're watching now, they are all recorded and you will have access to those forevermore. So if you can't attend a live session, doesn't matter because the recording will be there. It's better to attend live if you can, but we have lives, we have kids, we have all sorts of things going on. And so the sessions are there for you to watch and in fact rewatch so that you get another go. And that's sort of one of the real benefits, I think, of attending a teach along versus even a face-to-face whole day workshop, is that you can revisit the information as many times as you want, whenever you want. You'll have access to an online forum where you can ask questions. There's ongoing support. It's not a one-off where you ask questions on the day, and if you think of something 2 days later, then, oh, sorry about that, sort of tough luck. You'll have that ongoing support. So as I've said, 6 sessions, 5 one-hour live sessions, and I do a pre-recorded introductory session, which is sort of lots of information gathering. And I don't want to take up your lifetime. It's a bit like staff meetings. Why are we having a staff meeting when you could just send me an email with all that in it? That's where the introductory session comes. Now, the value of that 6 hours worth of content is $220. And if I run a face-to-face live workshop in a room, that's the ticket price. But for this teach along, the price is $79. Great value. I also have a special price for school-based bookings. So if you have 10 people in your school who book, I will offer a complimentary group coaching session for your staff, which we can do with everyone sitting in their own room with the social distancing, or whether you happen to be at home. So we arrange a mutually agreeable time and we all hop on and we have group coaching for your team. And that's absolutely free if your school books. So if you're an individual teacher who is interested, tomorrow on the site there will be a link to booking and you can book with PayPal. If you're a school, pop me an email and send me a purchase order and I will generate an online invoice that your school can pay for you from their office or wherever they're working these days. So that's it there. I'm going to stop sharing. There we go, and we're back. I really, really hope to see you on the teach along. And I know that at the moment, everybody's cognitive load is high. There's a lot going on. This starts on April 30th. We've got a few weeks before we start, but the bookings are only open for 3 weeks. There is an early bird price, which you'll see. I think it was 10, yeah, it was 10%, I think. Oh, I know, it's all right. 10% discount for booking early within the first few days. And if your school books 10 or more, then there's a free 1 hour group coaching session for your team that's available for you. Please pop your questions in the comments. Cognitive load is a really fascinating topic, and I'm not a neuroscientist or a cognitive scientist at all, But if we as teachers can understand the fundamentals of this, we can make a huge difference to ourselves and our students. Because when we design learning, we can support everybody. Our struggling readers don't have to be strugglers. We can help them in a variety of ways. And through this teach along, you'll do that. So there will be tomorrow an opportunity to book, but underneath this video here today is a link to a bit more information and also a flyer that you can download and forward to your school leadership to share with them information about the teach along that is to come. Someone on my last teach along emailed me and said, you know, I didn't realize that by participating, I would be building confidence to deliver learning online. So thank you. And that was really fantastic for me, because sometimes what I don't intend actually happens. And, you know, the online stuff is not new for me. This is what I do. So I haven't decided to jump on the bandwagon and make some money out of teaching online for you. This is just what I do. So come on board. We can make a difference to kids together. See me on my Facebook page, leave a message in the comments, and may the force be with you wherever you are, whoever you're teaching, whatever's happening for you. I wish you all the best. Pop me a message in as a private contact if you need to, but I look forward to seeing you. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and whatever you're doing, however you're teaching, happy teaching. Bye-bye.